Hi, folks. Just wanted to give you a wee walkthrough of the map of the Russian Civil War. Um, it can be quite complicated, and although you don't really need to know all the events of the Civil War, uh, because your question in the exam is usually about why the Bolsheviks won, um, it does help, I think, to understand a bit of what's going on here in the Civil War. Okay, the area that the Bolsheviks controlled after the 1917 revolution roughly corresponds to this area here, which is on the which we call the Russian Plain. So they uh, controlled most of the area of the Russian Plain. But as you go into Siberia and then down into this area here, which is the Caucasus, and then into Ukraine, this is where they're having problems down in the Black Sea and the Caspian. So this area here between the Caspian and the Black Sea is called the Caucasus. Okay. Um, right. Let's just try and take it in order a wee bit. What happened? Right. One of the first things that happened is that a rival government, set up here in Samara. This rival government was called the Komuch, and these were members of the provisional government, or sorry, members of the uh, Constituent Assembly, which had been elected in November 1917, which the Bolsheviks had shut down on its second day. So they were mostly SRs, okay, a few cadets and people like that. So that's where they were based in Samara. Now you can see that's it within the red zone, but I mean this front line moved about. You can see here there's a green line pushing up, so actually quite close to uh, Moscow. Um, this green line here at the bottom shows Denikin. Denikin was one of the generals who was in charge in the south, and he was involved in the siege of Tsaritsyn. Tsaritsyn is where Stalin was based during the Civil War, and later that city was named after him. It became known as Stalingrad. It's today Volgograd, but I'm sure you've heard of Stalingrad from GCSE. And so they had advanced quite close to Moscow. Over in the Black Sea area, this is the Crimea. You've got Wrangel, another general, and Wrangel and Denikin didn't work too well together, which is another thing that sometimes you can talk about. If these guys had combined their efforts, they probably could have made more of a push here. And up here in the east, or sorry, the west, we've got Yudenich, um, who tries to attack Petrograd through Estonia. Um, at this point, Stalin, or sorry, at this point, Lenin had already moved the capital to Moscow, and he was prepared to allow Petrograd to fall to Yudenich. But it was Trotsky who decided no, Petrograd is the cradle of the revolution, therefore Petrograd must be saved, and troops were sent to Petrograd for the defense of Petrograd. Now, Eugenich's force was quite small. I think it was about between 10 and 14,000 soldiers. But it could be much larger if he had worked with the Finns. But the Finns refused to work with Yudenich because if Yudenich wanted to recreate the Russian Empire and felt that places like Finland and Ukraine and so on shouldn't exist as separate countries, which was another issue that the whites had in trying to convince people to help them. Up here in the north, you've got Archangel, which is the area that the British, Americans, and French invaded. The British brought tanks with them to help the white forces, but they never really made much of an advance down here. The British um, efforts in Russia have sometimes been called half-hearted. You may have come across some of the quotes from Lloyd George, the Prime Minister at the time, who said he was prepared to accept a Bolshevik government rather than a broke British government. Okay, so they weren't too concerned about what was going on. Um, Also, there's another problem that the British and Americans had is these guys, Denikin, Wrangel, and Yudenich, are reactionaries and they're wannabe dictators. And did the USA and Britain and France want to be supporting these guys? They don't really trust them. Okay. At the start of the Civil War, there was this issue of the Czech Legion, and the Czech Legion can cause all sorts of problems for people who are trying to work out what the hell's going on here. The Czech Legion were part of the Russian army. They had been fighting over here in Ukraine, but when the war ended, when the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was signed, they were behind the front line. If you know what I mean, and you just couldn't release them over the border because you'd be releasing them into German and Austrian territory. So the Czechs had to find a way to get back to Western Europe. They needed to get away to get to France. Okay, so the plan was that the Czech Legion would travel along the Trans-Siberian Railroad the whole way to Vladivostok, where they would get ships then and be shipped round the other side over to the Western Front in France. And that was the agreement. And there was 50,000 of them. And they were travelling down the Trans-Siberian Railroad. But as they did, and as they were meeting these towns like Omsk and Novosibirsk and Irkutsk, um, they kept coming into problems when they met local Soviet officials, until eventually the Czech Legion revolted and took over a few of these towns. And then they worked with the Comets then to seize Samara, and they were advancing on Ekaterinburg. And this is why the Czech Legion are important, because they were like a ready-made army, 50,000 soldiers, and they were just trying to get out of Russia, but they ended up taking part in the Civil War. Ekaterinburg is important because this is where the Tsar and his family were being held, and as these advances were being made on Ekaterinburg, the decision was made to kill the Tsar and his family. Um, Kolchak uh, is important too, because Kolchak is a good example of uh, the divisions within the white forces, because Kolchak actually led a coup against the Komuch and the provisional government of Siberia, as it was called, which was based in Omsk. So there was two governments here, two white governments, if you like, set up, and Kolchak led a coup and overtook both of them. Kolchak was actually supported by the British. I think he was a bit of a British agent, but don't worry about that. So here you can see how even the whites are fighting amongst themselves. Kolchak actually murders a lot of or has executed a lot of the SRs who were involved in the Komuch. Okay. But you get some sort of appreciation of the distances between these guys. I mean, we're talking from Petrograd to Archangel is 1,000 miles or 1,000 kilometers. So look at the distance involved in these forces here. And the area that Kolchak is working on is Western Siberia, which is very barren, very depopulated, no cities, very difficult to get to commute and make communications with anything. Yudenich again is working with these nationalities who don't want him to be there. In this area, you've got a lot of things going on as well. The Cossacks are interesting because although the Cossacks were fighting against the Bolsheviks, once they'd driven the Bolsheviks out of their area, they didn't want to go any further. When Denikin was trying to get the Cossacks to travel to Moscow, they were going, no, we're okay. We've cleared our area. We're quite happy. So a lot of the people who are involved in the white forces have got different aims. The Cossacks were quite happy just to clear their areas and take control. Wrangel and Denikin couldn't agree because both of them felt that the other one wanted to be a dictator. Yudenich was acting on his own. Kolchak was fighting with the Komuch and the provisional government of Siberia. The Czech Legion, well, they were just trying to get out of Russia and just got wrapped up in it. The British and the Americans and the Russians, or British Americans and the French, sort of didn't really know why they were there. So it's quite clear from this. You can see, although the Soviets look like they're surrounded, it looks like the area controlled by the Bolsheviks is surrounded. The people who are attacking them on the outskirts are in quite a weak position. Okay, so that's the geography of the Russian Civil War. Remember, you don't really need to know the details of what happened during the Civil War, other than why the Bolsheviks won, but it is good to be able to talk about Archangel, talk about Ekaterinburg, Samara, Kolchak, Wrangel, Denikin, and sort of have an idea in your head where these things are, and drop them in every now and again to show the examiner that you know what you're talking about. Okay, best of luck.